Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special tea and jam with me. I know it's been a minute since I've been able to do one of these. I've been busy. In fact, today I'm zooming in from Knoxville, Tennessee, home of Mi Madre. And I'm very excited because I'm going to be able to display her teapots. Very potent for the teapot project. Maybe Vanya and I can talk a little bit about that. So today I'm going to be talking with my dear friend, longtime yoga instructor, although I haven't had a chance to take yoga with Vanya in a minute, and I bet she's going to tell me a little bit about why that is. Yoga is a doula and a tea maker, also very timely for our conversation. And just a gad about town. Duck, duck, duck. Vanya, are you there? Welcome, Vanya.
Hey, Shannon.
How are you? Did you enjoy my little ruse?
I did always.
It's always a little weird to have somebody talk about you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't mind. I don't mind.
How would you introduce yourself?
Oh, goodness. That's great. Yeah, I think it changes just slightly, just depending on, who I'm with. But
Hmm.
what came up in this moment is I am the daughter of Belinda McCoy Francis and Ira Francis. I'm the mother of Taraja and Awotunde, but I'm also the founder of Cherished Life. I like to think of myself as a community builder. I am a certified yoga instructor, a holistic doula, and a tea maker, as you mentioned. I'm also a childbirth educator. I've been doing that for a while, but it's like official this
Mm.
month. So I've been doing some more studies, with that. So yeah, that's me.
I always
Somewhat.
love listening to you because you're always like inventing and reinventing yourself. And it's so pertinent and poignant for this project that I'm doing, which is about work and how we iterate ourselves through our work and what we learn about ourselves through our work. And I feel like you and I have both been so many selves in the time that we've known each other, which is going on about 15 years now. Uh,
Yes.
so let's just dive right in on that. So when we first met, I was taking yoga with you, and I feel like that's sort of less and less what you do these days. Yes.
Yeah, it is. I think I was sort of I was in the infancy stage of probably
Mhm.
my yoga teaching journey.
Mhm.
I think it also is appropriate for this conversation to mention that, like, prior to being a yoga and wellness professional, I worked in corporate and like marketing and business development. And then that layoff was what was, I always say, the gift that led me to teaching yoga full time. So, so yeah, I'm doing less and less of that because when I started teaching yoga, I also started teaching prenatal yoga. I came out of my teacher's training in 2009, knowing that I had this passion for prenatal yoga. It had been influenced by my personal journey
Mhm.
with my daughter Taraji, who's now 16, which is hard to believe. And it had been such a remarkable experience for me during my pregnancy and in preparation for my birth that I knew coming out of teacher training that I had a like real interest in sharing this with others. So as long as I've been teaching yoga, I've been teaching prenatal yoga. And I found though that my prenatal yoga classes always grew really organically. The regular yoga classes would do fine. And then I had very faithful folks like yourself who really appreciated the nurturing style that I really try to bring to my practice. And so I started looking at that. And as the years went by, and I had several iterations of teaching, I had a yoga space here in Atlanta for about a year and a half. And then coming out of that experience, which I learned a lot, and I learned that I did not want to be a yoga studio owner.
Mhm.
I sat with the question, like, what do I want to do? And this was like, as soon as I closed my studio doors, I got pregnant with my son. And so as I, gave birth and started thinking about, okay, what does this next chapter look like? What do I really want to do? What brings me joy? I was like teaching prenatal yoga. That's all I want to do. That's all I did my whole pregnancy. And so then after that, I decided I really want to focus on birth and supporting folks, with yoga in preparation for birth in this way.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I got to really focus on the birth work, which led me to become a doula, which led me to become a childbirth educator, and even inspired the wellness product that I have, the tea that I make.
Gosh, it's so interesting because I really thought the doula stuff had been there for a while now, but it's really more recent. So
Mhm.
here did you become a doula?
2018. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's been a little while. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
Uh,
going on 6 years now. That really just zinged me to the core when you said that about, the layoff led to, what you feel like is your purpose. Because I always think about there's this country song, which I'm not a country music listener, but there, every once in a while, like the universe will hand you a gift or a message through this thing that you wouldn't normally pay attention to.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And I
Yeah.
feel like life does have this way of like propelling you forward through the like most painful thing that you didn't want.
Exactly. Exactly. Because
Yeah. So can you talk a little, huh?
no, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh,
Ask
I just
the
want to
question.
hear more about those places, those pain points. Maybe you could like, it might be kind of like the birth pains of like, this is like a contraction of like life is moving you forward in a process that, is uncomfortable,
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely say the layoff was one of the first.
Mm.
And I mean, serendipitous, yes and no, because around the time that I was laid off months prior, I had already kind of set things in motion. I was having conversations with folks who were in, positions at Lululemon, frankly, it was local store, and I was trying to figure out how can I transfer my marketing and business development to the wellness space because I was always that woman that was bringing like vegan treats and talking holistic practices with everybody in my department, but we were in animation. I worked at Cartoon Network. And so, was out of alignment and really struggled with networking and moving up, even though I had been groomed for that. And everything in my life had prepared me to be on this upward trajectory in corporate America. And I just felt so uncomfortable there. And so I knew it was time to transition, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so I just started having conversations with, people outside of the company trying to figure out like what could this next step be. And I'll never forget I had a conversation with a recruiter at Lululemon and she said, well, Vanya, you should, essentially set intentions. But she told me there's this exercise that they would do where she was like, you should just draw a circle, get a piece of paper, draw a circle, put everything you want on the inside of the circle and everything you don't want on the outside of the circle. And just kind of see what comes up for you. And I was like, okay. I was like, this is a test. And she was like, yeah, and then share it with me when you're done. And I was like, okay. So I knew well enough to know that I didn't really want to focus on what I didn't want. So I put all the things that I was hoping for at the time inside the circle. And it was probably like 4 things outside the circle. And I did it real pretty, created like a little, PowerPoint slide, PDF, sent it to her. But one of the things on the outside of that circle was not be at Turner next year. What year was it? I don't even know at this point, but whatever the year was, it was like not be at Turner in 2012, probably, because I think it was 2011. So sent it on. She replied. I don't even really remember what she said, but literally within 2 months was when I got my layoff. And I'll never forget that moment where I came into work. I was late because I was late taking my daughter to school. And my supervisor, almost before I could sit down, she grabbed my hand and whisked me away. And she was like, you have to come with me. And I was like, okay. And we went up a couple levels in the building. I walked into this room. My vice president of the department had flown in from New York, and he was sitting there with an HR representative. And the first thing he said was, I'm so sorry. And then after that, it was just like, I didn't hear anything he said. It was like the teacher from Charlie Brown.
Snoopy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just couldn't believe it. But then it only took a few moments for me to be like, wait a minute, this is like everything you've been asking for, but it's even better because you're going to get a severance package. And you'll have time to think about you. So I would say that was one.
Mm,
Um, and that gave me the space and opportunity to develop the first iteration of my company, which was I founded it with a friend. And we did that for a couple years, but she still had a full-time job um and I was a full-time entrepreneur. So you can
mhm.
imagine that didn't last for very long.
Really
Um,
differential in the power balance.
Yes. Yeah. So that was clarifying. I feel like I've had all these clarifying moments. So that was one. And then I set out to have the physical yoga studio space. And after that experience, which was a year and a half, and just lots of trials and, tribulations with that, I came out of that realizing that it had completely shifted my relationship to yoga, the thing that I loved. And I was stressed out teaching yoga. And that is not how I wanted to offer the practice. And so after my second pregnancy with my son, which I mentioned came on the heels of me closing the brick and mortar studio, I had an opportunity once again to really sit with what is it that you really want to do? And that was for me, teach prenatal yoga. Um, and I never thought I could become a doula. I had a lot of doula friends that I would refer all of my prenatal yoga students out to because I always say I have a very intimate relationship with sleep. So the thought of like being called in the middle of the night to go to somebody's birth, I was like, I don't even understand how you all do that.
Right.
Um, and then I started doing it. So I think that was another turning point for me. And then the final one I'll say was probably this year. I've always had some form of a part-time job while teaching yoga. For many years, it was teaching as a yoga and meditation professor at Spelman, which was still very much in alignment with what I was doing and brought me a lot of joy. But I also had this other thing, my baby, Cherished Life, my business that wasn't getting my full attention. And I knew I had come to a point, literally this year, it'll be 10 years, where I needed to really lean into it. And I said, okay, I got to bet on myself at this point. Either we're gonna do this or we're not, honey. And so yeah, the first 3 months of this year have been an interesting ride. I've, had to get still and trust and walk in faith. And I would say I feel like things are shifting and turning, and I feel very affirmed that I've made the right decision. But yeah, I've had some clarifying moments too. And a couple of them have been like, go where you're wanted. I
Mhm.
heard that quote, you know, a few weeks ago at a conference that I went to. And, just giving myself permission to adjust and to pivot when needed and when something's not working. So,
Yeah. Whew. So, the reason why I'm having these conversations is because I'm working on my first one woman show, like Shannon tells a story. I've spent the first 7 years of my practice going all over helping other people tell their stories. And I finally decided it was time for me to sort of like sink my teeth into like a big old opportunity for me to tell a story. And that story is about my search for purpose through the endless string of crappy jobs that I had in my early 20s. I was sort of like rooting around, trying to figure my ish out after college. And, I worked in a bar and I temped and I worked in a bar and I worked in a video store and I got fired from substitute teaching and like I just like had like 1,000 W-2s that I had to turn in with my tax, And it's interesting because that was around the turn of the millennium. And so I think there's interesting parallels between that time and today. We had presidential impeachment, we had the dot-com bubble burst, we had um, Y2K, like there's just like interesting churn in the zeitgeist, and then there's also parallels between my life at that time and my life now, in terms of like I'm still scrapping sometimes in order to make it work as an artist. But I think the difference is that, now I do have that sense of purpose. So I've developed this project with 4 tenets of purpose, power, passion, and possibility. And when I think of you, definitely like all 4 of those words that's like come through like a clarion bell. I've been playing around with also adding in play and permission, because those words are interesting to me in terms of how they iterate through our sense of self and our work, especially as an artist, because I feel like you have to give yourself permission, and you have to give yourself permission to play in order to, figure out new work. I'm curious, when I bring up these concepts, is there anything that comes forward for you, a story or a kernel of learning that you would want to talk about, in terms of purpose, power, passion, or possibility?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna write this down because I know. But okay, a visual person. I feel like
Yeah,
getting
I love
old.
that.
Yeah. So purpose, passion, or purpose, power, passion.
Purpose, power, passion, and possibility. And then
Yeah.
if you want to kick in on the side there, permission and play.
Yeah. And play. Yeah. So I think for me, power, and it was funny because I was just at a workshop last night, excuse me. And we were talking about power and like the just how your power really comes from, well, for me, what I like, my power comes from feeling like I'm in alignment, which also I think is right in alignment, well, being in alignment, but it also goes along with purpose, right? So, and when I am not in alignment, I've learned, so for me, that was my experience at Turner. For me, that was, even though I was teaching yoga, I wasn't truly teaching what it was that I was passionate about, right? So then passion comes up. So power comes from being in alignment, I think, in a lot of ways for me. And as I get older and wiser, that really is informed by my gut, like intuitively, what feels good. And I always use this example, when I'm faced with what seem like difficult decisions. I mean, I think anything that comes up, I think we all have sort of a knee-jerk reaction to it. But when it's something really important, for me, it's either a hell yes or an F no. And if it's not one of those two things, if it's not a hell yes, then maybe it's just a no, not right now. And the more I really honor like that inner voice and that intuition, um, it allows me to be in alignment, which then is the source of my power. And when I'm not in alignment, um, I'm all over the place. And there's a extreme loss of power for me and momentum, frankly. So yeah, I think power really, it really resonates with me at this time. And then, I talked about like permission, but just giving yourself permission. And I talked to my mamas about this, like even in birth as a doula, I say, we plan, because everybody is interested in their birth plan, having their birth plan or their birth preferences, but we plan and then we plan to adjust, because we're constantly integrating new information. And, I like to always deal with exactly what's in front of me and then try to make the best possible decision from there. Um, and so permission to pivot, permission to do things differently, permission to, give yourself grace when it's not working out or when you're tired or whatever the case may be, has also been, I think, an important part of my journey,
Mhm.
because in a lot of ways, I feel like I've been the lone soldier with like prenatal yoga in Atlanta. I don't know many other people who are just focused on that. I know some amazing instructors who can teach it, but who have not really chosen to only teach it. And um, and so as somebody who kind of had this really charted path for a while, I found myself kind of looking to the left and to the right, like, to kind of see what next steps were. And then I had to eventually realize, like, you're the one that's blazing this trail. So you get to decide what the next step is.
Mhm.
And then, if you can only see a few steps in front of you, that's okay. But then you have permission to change once you get there. Once you can see with a little bit more clarity, then it's like, okay, well, maybe I just do it a little different. I couldn't see this part before. So now that I can, I'm gonna shift because this feels like better to me. So
Mhm. Yeah, I love that because I think even a situation that may have started out a hell yeah can change over time. You really have to pay attention to how things are changing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love the metaphor of tea. Someone actually, an ex reflected to me years later after he'd like healed and moved on and gotten like the great partner that was meant for him. He wrote to me and said, that in reflection with his partner, that he thought a lot about me, and he had come upon this quote that true character is like tea, that your character comes out when the water gets hot.
mm,
uh,
interesting.
yeah. So I think that sometimes as we steep in that water, which can be a work situation, um, something that felt good when we started can change over time. And then we have to know when it's time to get out.
I love
But
that.
your example of Turner, like they helped you even bet you knew it was time, but it was hard to make that decision when resources are involved, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know. I always say I don't know how long I would have been there. I think I probably would have left eventually, but I don't know if I would have become an entrepreneur. I just don't
Mm,
know
mhm,
because I
mhm,
was a pretty, this is how you do things person, but have always kind of, dance to the beat of my own drum. So it's been interesting I've been using the analogy of feeling like I'm trying to fit a square peg in a round hole,
yeah.
you know, in many spaces in my life. And the other thing I'm moving with these days is I'm no longer interested in fitting in, I want to stand out. And um, and yet I'm very much like a team player, describe myself as a community builder, but I think there's this interesting negotiation of like, if I may, personal power and how that can be in service
Mhm,
to the communities and that we don't all have to do community the same way.
mhm,
Um, and I think they're very specific ideas, particularly in the spaces that I'm in the birth community, where, there's this there's a certain way that that looks in a lot of spaces. And I was like, I'm just doing it differently and I'm okay with that.
So let's talk a little about the health stuff, your angle on the teas, even being vegan. I feel like when we first met, you were just vegetarian and then you moved to being vegan. Is that correct?
Probably I've had
Yeah.
shifts and now I'm pescatarian. So
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I get that. Because I feel like it's certainly gotten a lot easier to operate in those spaces and in the health food stuff with Atlanta. You go out to eat and you like have like a slam a good meal. Uh,
mhm.
Tell me, like, is that mostly health related? Is it about like solidarity with the animals? Like, where's your perspective come from with that? And then talk a little bit about the tea and how you make it and all of that.
Yeah. So I would describe myself as plant-based, because I recognize that with a plant-based diet, I think, there's undeniable health benefits to that. But I'm also trained as a holistic health coach. I don't actively practice health coaching, but I fold that into my doula services now and how I support my clients and families. I also recognize that one person's food can be another person's poison. And I had a very personal experience with that with my daughter, who I raised vegan for the first 8 or 9 years of her life. And when she was about 8 years old, she started experiencing really bad migraines, and we couldn't figure it out. It was about 6 months of, just throwing everything at the wall, trying to figure out how to support her. I mean, we went to neurologists, we did all sorts of things, and just could not figure out what was going on. And then we gave her some fish. I don't know. It came up actually in a spiritual reading that it was okay to do that. And we did it, and her headaches were gone instantly. And I was like, this is really interesting. And I mean, her father and I, we were eating fish at the time too. We had gone back to eating fish, but we had maintained, her vegan diet. And I was like, okay, this is like for me a real alive example of how this is really true. I'm not just, giving out this advice. Like I can see how this works. So I personally have benefited from the power of food as my medicine. I'm also somebody who believes strongly in fasting. I know intermittent fasting is a big thing. I have, in the past offered juice cleanses as part of my health services. And I myself have completed two 40-day fasts, and um, will often, at least once a year, and usually leading up to my birthday, I usually like to do an extended fast. And I'm actually getting ready to prep for that again because my birthday is in June. Um, but food is energy, whether or not we know it or are aware of that. And so I have a real respect for um, the food and the things that go in my body. I'm not always as conscious and aware and diligent. And I also have children who have preferences and needs. So again, there's a lot of fluidity and flexibility with that. But I really just try to honor whole foods and a plant-based diet as much as possible. And with that like reverence for food as medicine, it led me to develop my teas. I mean, for a while it was juices. It's so interesting because I'm not like a chef, but beverages somehow have always kind of been, and probably because I'm also somebody who likes efficiency and like ease and convenience. So I'm like, if I can get it in really quickly without a whole lot, then that's usually what I'm signing up for. And I like it to be accessible for other folks, because I truly believe being well, eating well can be enjoyable. And so I've always wanted to share that with other people. Because it is for me. I was like, I don't like anything that doesn't taste good. I mean, from a medicinal perspective, if I need to use something, that's going to help me get better, I will, fine. But for the most part, I find pleasure in eating, as most of us do. And so, I like for healthy foods to be pleasurable as well. So, when I was pregnant with my son, prenatal vitamins did not agree with me. And at the recommendation of my midwife, and I birthed both of my children at home, she suggested that I start steeping herbs. And there's a particular combination of herbs that a lot of midwives will recommend. And so I did. I started doing it, and I was teaching prenatal yoga at the time. And I was like, gosh, I want to make this really delicious for my students. And then I started playing with tea blends and flavors and even sweeteners, because I did not want pregnant women pumping themselves full of
Keep going.
okay. I didn't want pregnant women pumping themselves full of sugar. So I was like, I want to have control over what it is that this is sweetened with. So long story short, I developed Cherished Tea, which is it's a tea infusion, so it is steeped for at least 8 hours. 6 organic herbs, and it is flavored with hibiscus, elderberries, blueberries, currants, and lightly sweetened with monk fruit, which is considered a superfood too, but it's zero sugar, zero glycemic index sweetener, and it's chilled. So I have some with me today. That's what I'm drinking in my cup. But anyway, yeah, so I bottled them and I just like them, it's convenient. So I cool them so that you can just drink them as an iced tea. But then I also heat it, or it starts heated. So you can sip on it either way. And so I just started sharing that with the folks in my life, sharing it with my students, and then just started hearing from folks about the remarkable experiences that they were having with them. For pregnant women, it really helps to reduce swelling and inflammation and edema. Really helps with just digestive challenges and all sorts of things. So I didn't exactly know what I was creating at the time, but now I know yeah, it's a wonderful health beverage that really benefits everybody. It's not just for pregnant folks.
Well, I had some and it was delicious. And I also got some for my friend when she was pregnant and she thought it was amazing. So I approve. It is a delicious tea.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some folks who are listening in are in Atlanta, they should definitely try it out. So
Yeah.
is it mostly available through you or can you pick it up in markets?
Yeah, so right now it's just available on my website. You can
Mhm.
order my website. I'm direct to customer right now. So I do ship, so have
Mhm.
a local pickup location, but also local delivery and then shipping to most states right
Okay,
now.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put your websites in the follow-up materials on the YouTubes and the interwebs of the various social capacities.
Yes.
So sometimes when I'm doing these, I have this like little magical random roll of dice on my computer here. So I'm going to pull that up, and so I want you to tell me when to hit stop
Okay.
whenever
Stop.
you're ready. Okay, 26. So I want you to tell me a story about yourself when you were 26.
Oh my goodness, Shannon, I don't even remember.
Sounds
Okay, hold on. Let me back up. Trying to think where I was when I was 26. So I had my daughter at 28. So is it fair to say that was like 2004, maybe?
about right.
So I could have been a couple places. Yeah. Yeah, I think okay. So that was an interesting year. So I was finishing graduate school at University of Southern California, and moving back to Atlanta. But I'm like, what's a good story about that time? Um, I mean, it was interesting because I did not like LA and was eager to get back to the East Coast. I won't say I didn't like LA. I liked LA, but as a unemployed graduate student in LA without a car, it was a very different experience. So I decided to move back to Atlanta. So I moved back to Atlanta in September of that year and didn't really know what was next. A job that I had, this is so funny, my jobs. I'd had an internship and they had supposedly secured me a job here in Atlanta. And then when I got here, it fell through. So I ended up staying with a friend and frankly, sleeping on her couch for a few months until I landed my position at Turner, which, kind of where I was for 7 years prior to being laid off. So I think that was another interesting, maybe pain point or just transitional period in life where I was really on this like faith walk and just having to trust that everything was going to work out. I was actually very motivated to move back to Atlanta too, because I was seeing a guy, or really it's still in love with my children's father. We had met when I was in college. And so we were able to sort of rekindle our connection. We're not together today, but I was really driven by that. And it was really important for me to explore that and explore it without knowing how it would end up, but it was like one of these things that I had to do. So, of course, I'm happy I did because I have two beautiful children as a result. But yeah, it was an interesting year. I graduated from graduate school, moved back to Atlanta, lost and found another job, and yeah.
Nice. Okay. So when I was 26, I had been in AmeriCorps and I got a job through AmeriCorps at the place where I'd been. I was at the YMCA. And one thing that was interesting about that period of time is I think it was one of the iterations of my life where the signs that storyteller, maybe could have been my job if I were paying attention were there. I kept being asked to go. So I had worked at a camp previously, and so I would show up and tell stories at the crafts fair that we did as a fundraiser. Like they would ask me to come tell stories uh, just in the hallway for kids, which was a really awful place to do that because like people would be like just walking straight through as I was trying to tell these, to children, or at the various programs that we had for children and people with intellectual disabilities. And then one time I actually got invited to go out to like a Halloween fall festival to tell a story. And I've been thinking about that moment, that invitation a lot because it was an opportunity to learn a new story because I didn't really have any scary stories or anything like that. And I had about a month or 6 weeks to prepare for that. And every day I would think, oh, I should go to the library and like find a new story and learn it and tell it. And it just filled me with so much anxiety that even I remember the day of the performance came and I just like laid in my bed all day and just sort of was freaking out about this thing,
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up going out there and I like made up a costume for myself and I just sort of like phoned it in, I did it. Um, but I look back on that and like I have so much more understanding and appreciation of like how we thwart ourselves, the parts of ourselves that when they're not ready, I've been getting really into internal family systems theory and psychology and how the how anxiety masks itself as depression,
Mm.
so that laying on the bed all day might have looked like depression, but really it was just like I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Yes. So all went well with the story.
I mean, it was okay. It was not, it definitely, nobody from the outside would have been like, oh, she's going to be a professional storyteller one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And anxiety is a real thing. Yeah, I have had my own, I think, struggles with that over the years. And even now, as public speaking is a thing for me. I've sought your help with that and probably will be coming back again soon. But I think I've learned one of the things that I've learned about myself, and I've been just dipping my toe into the study of human design.
Mhm.
Uh, I have a friend, a colleague who is a practitioner. She knows a lot about it, and she's kind of been helping me understand my human design. And I'm a mental projector, which essentially means one of the qualities or characteristics are when we're in front of large groups, um, we tend to absorb the energy of the group. And then we have to filter through it and and then can kind of respond. And so what I initially saw as a weakness, and we're very highly, intuitive, spiritual folks. And so, but what I've always thought of as a weakness in terms of like, why do I get so full? And that was the term that I started using for it when I'm in front of people. Like, why is this such a thing? Everybody's like, but you teach yoga and you taught at Spelman, and I'm like, yeah, but it's different, right? But yeah, I've learned a lot of my what appears to be sort of anxiety and nervousness, and when it comes to being in large groups, is really about sort of the energy that I'm taking in, and then the immediate sort of processing and filtering out, and usually after a few moments, it calms down. It's like I find my rhythm, but that is a part of my process. And so I was like, when I kind of learned that about myself, I was like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense to me. And now for me, it's a source of power. It's not it's not a weakness. So, and
Mhm.
sometimes I just say to folks, hey, it takes me a minute. I'm integrating, I'm processing, and then
It's
let's take
so
a few deep breaths together so I can ground myself in this space, right?
good stuff comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's so interesting, all these different ways that we have now of like cutting and slicing and like understanding different people, whether it's, Myers-Briggs or
Yeah.
Enneagram or, what color is your parachute or human design or internal family systems or like all of these different ways. It's like, I'm a, Gemini rising with a, INFP or it's like,
It's a
yeah.
lot. It's a
So
lot.
tell me something else you feel like you're learning or understanding or appreciating about yourself differently because of internal or human design.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely, I think, the most profound, and also rest, which I knew, but it was really interesting to kind of have that affirmation, how rest and time alone, um, and just time for self is so critical to my well-being, like more critical than it is for most people. And it's funny because there's been this ongoing joke, like my friends always tease me about the fact that I go to bed at like 9 o'clock and have like all of my life. So even in college, sometimes we would be out partying, we would be at the club, and I don't know, something would just come over me and I like had to lay down. I was just tired. I was no longer interested in being with them, being around all these people. So I would be like, okay, I'm gonna go take a nap in the car. And they're like, you're gonna do what? And I'm like, no, no, continue enjoying yourself. Don't like, do you. I'm about to do me. Or, sometimes people want me to be out with them. And I'm like, yeah, no. Like the idea of my bed is so much more attractive. And so, and I mean, yeah, lay down a lot of most nights at 9 o'clock with my son. Now, sometimes I get up and run around in the middle of the night to try to take care of things that most people would stay up to do, or I'll get up really early to do it. But like rest is so critical for me. I do not like being tired. I think I already mentioned I have an intimate relationship with sleep. And now I realize that is a part of my constitution and my design. And so I'm like, oh, great. I'm glad I have, like an explanation for this now because it is totally who I have always been.
I love that. It's a really astute observation. And I think so, they just recently have come out with some new, little factoid about the fact that so many people under 30 are getting less than 8 hours of sleep. I feel like it was something like 80% of people under 30 are getting under 8 hours of sleep or something. I can't remember. It's like ridiculous, like scary, probably explains all the road rage we're seeing.
Yeah, folks are so sleep deprived. I mean, it's insane. It was funny because my daughter, who is a wonderful young lady, very high achieving, very responsible, like I really could not have asked for a better child. She's really so wonderful. And she pushes herself. You know, I see a lot of me in her at that age where she's just driven. She's got this really strong internal, I always say her internal compass is like truth. It just points to truth and she's always just like, you know, striving to do her best, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we had this moment last summer, you know, towards the end of last school year when she was, I mean, we just had so much going on. She had a lot going on because she's a dancer too. And so, in addition to being a great student, she loves to dance. So that means, you know, she's got dance rehearsals several hours a week. And I think we got to the summertime and she was able to just sleep. And she's somebody that can stay and does stay up late. She's a night owl, but it was interesting. She was like, I can't recall when I felt like this. Like she was like, I feel so much better. And I now realizing like I have been exhausted. Like, you know, and I was like, Taraja, you have to. And you know, of course, me, her yogi mama, trying to tell her to do stuff a lot of times, like rest and breathe and meditate, doesn't always resonate with her. But I was like, yes. I was like, you have got to take care of yourself in this way. I mean, it's just not, none of it's worth it if you're not here to participate and to, you know, be fully present for it. You've got to take care of yourself first. So, yeah, young folks are, they're on a different thing right now.
Mm. Just like, isn't it so funny how we have to hear things like that from somebody else besides our family member?
Yeah,
Like, my
yeah.
mom and I have been doing some of that this week. Like, I call up your friend so your friend can say it to you because you can't hear this from me.
Hmm, hmm.
Speaking of, like, isn't this an amazing teapot collection I
It
got?
is. I
My
would
mom.
love to hear more about this, you
Well, I
know.
mean, like she's been collecting teapots for years. It's like one of her favorite things. But I don't think there's been ever any tea in any of these. But like, I wish I could hold them all up for you. Is it? Can you see any of them close enough to like? Would you pick one out if you were gonna make a pot of tea for yourself? Like, what's one of your favorite ones you can see?
Trying to see. They're so interesting. I can't really see the details on all of them.
Yeah, I should
What's
get like.
that? What is that pink one back there on the right?
Oh yeah,
Is
that
that a
might be
teapot
the base.
or is that
That might
something
be
else?
the base. Yeah.
Oh, but
Look
that's really interesting. Well, let's go back to the one with the gold top and what is that?
Yeah, that's his 50th anniversary. That one might be for like a church or
Oh,
something.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this one that kind of looks sort of like it's
Yes.
from China or something. And there's one
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And this one looks like it's a teapot and a cup together. It's like
I
half a,
know. So interesting.
yeah, they're
It's
all,
such
look, there's one that's like a house.
uh-huh. Oh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I see it.
Yeah.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So, and does she drink tea now? Does she drink herself tea?
Drinks the southern kind of tea.
Yeah. Right, right, right.
Do you
Yeah.
collect anything?
Not really. And I've been thinking a lot about that because I know people have things that they like love to collect. It's funny, I went through this decluttering process
Mhm.
in the middle of the pandemic, actually, because I had to move in the middle of the pandemic. My house was being sold. I was renting at the time, and so I went through the life-changing magic of tidying up or whatever. My good friend Kenya is like went through her certification process, and I saw what she had done in her life, and I was like, oh my goodness, I would like to do that too. And I've always been a pretty tidy person though. But one of the things that bring me joy are like clean, clutter-free, beautiful spaces. And so I think probably as a result, and so when you go through that process, it really is almost something that lasts for a lifetime. Because there's a mindset shift, and then you literally have to like go through every corner of your house and decide if those things bring you joy or not. And then based on that, you get rid of the things, right? So I think we've all probably heard some part of this process in some way, but I took it really seriously. Like I leaned in and went through the process. It took about a month leading up to my move. And so anyway, this is a long way of answering your question, but I don't, as a result, I don't really keep a lot of things. I mean, obviously, like I collect photos and, have those memories, things of that nature, but I don't really have a lot of stuff, if you
Mhm.
know. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, as we're coming to the end of the hour, I'm just curious after I've now described this project to you that I'm doing, and that we've known each other for a while. What are you seeing? What do you want to reflect back to me? What should I, with all your life experience and the many manifestations of Vanya, what do you think I should be paying attention to? What do you want to recommend that I steer into?
Shannon, I feel like you're so good at this. I I really like the idea of purpose, like how you led with purpose. And um, okay, am I recommending for you personally or for the project?
Either one. I feel
Okay.
like open to your
Yeah.
ideas.
I mean, I think this dovetails really beautifully into the work that you do with Story Muse. And I know you've had so many different chapters, if you will, or just parts of of your company. Um, I love this idea because for me, this feels like a really organic way of storytelling,
Mm.
and purpose is one of those things that I think a lot of folks struggle with, or um, I mean, it can be a little daunting to think about, okay, what is my purpose in this lifetime? And so I think being able to have these conversations with people is really important and necessary. I don't know if at this time I have a recommendation of anything specifically that you could be doing differently, but I really like this platform and this medium and this way of connecting with folks who may not be like formal, right, storytellers, if you will, but I think this is a very organic and inspiring way of helping people possibly connect with their purpose, which then leads to power, to passion, and endless possibilities. So I hope that helps in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about that, what you said about how some people really do have a hard time struggling with their sense of purpose,
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was in college in my early 20s, I would come home and I would that was, in this time that I'm doing the show, and I would be so fascinated with work because I was like struggling so much with it, and I would ask people in my family like, "How's your job going?" Just like making conversation.
Mhm.
And people didn't want to talk about it at all. I was just mostly making conversation, and like my uncle worked at like the glasses store, where my cousin worked at the honey baked ham store, and they would just be like, it's a job.
Yeah.
So I think this notion of like I don't know how you help people figure out their purpose if they don't even feel like that's a thing that you should figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I mean, I was excited by these things, and I guess in some ways have been privileged to be able to explore my purpose, and my passions and create possibilities. I think it's a very conscious, intentional decision too, though. I mean, it has not been without sacrifice, and I've probably gone without some things that some folks just are not willing to. But I think it opens the door for conversations and awareness around the fact that we can do it differently. And I think we're living in a time where folks are really doing it differently. Like, I mean, the pandemic, I think, gave us that, by all of these virtual spaces and meetings. And I mean, when I had to pivot and start teaching yoga online, I was like, what? And now I'm like Well, this is actually one of the ways I prefer to do it. And then being able to connect with you, just here now.
Mhm.
So I think the more awareness there is around it, and for folks who are living really purpose-driven, passion-driven lives, hopefully, it gives others permission and inspiration to do the same.
Mm. Well, from your mouth to the universe's ears. I think we should say goodbye to our audience, but if you don't mind to stick around a little bit, I'd love to connect a little bit more one-on-one, but let's say goodbye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
listening, and
Shannon.
we'll be posting this on all the places. We appreciate it if you cross-posted, and I guess we hope that you'll have a passionate, purposeful day. Take care. Thanks, everyone.